Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Tuesday Night Live for another Tuesday night edition brought to you by CrowCast. I'm here, joined as usual by our motley crew, Donkey, Macca, and Pete. How you going, guys?
Hello, mate. How you going?
Yeah, very motley, thanks.
Very motley. Very good. Well, as usual, we've got a massive show lined up. Lots to talk about. The Crows obviously dipping out for the season. But before we get into all of that terrible news, let's get into some other news, shall we?
I guess the massive tribunal news is actually Crows news, and that's obviously Taylor Walker's fairly controversial decision. I thought 2 matches, but not challenged, and I suspect that was probably more about management of the player than anything else. Any thoughts on that from you guys?
Yeah, I thought it was outrageous that he got done.
Well, I watched the explanation by the so-called expert, Michael Christian, and he showed examples that he didn't think were reportable, which I thought looked a lot worse than what Taylor Walker's were. And then his explanation is why Taylor Walker went. But it's totally based on outcome, not on what he actually did. So I think he's very unlucky. That's what I think, anyhow.
I couldn't agree more, Mac. He Tex threw him horizontal. He went horizontal, didn't get driven in the ground. Didn't have his arms pinned. Like, it was an unfortunate outcome, but it wasn't something you should be trying to stamp out. And it's just another example of Christensen being just such a grub.
It was 2 actions, though.
Meh.
Well, there was a bit of slinging, and that's what you're really getting at, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
You know.
Sorry, you go.
No, I mean, I thought it was definitely stiff to get 2. I didn't think it warranted 2. I wasn't surprised that he got sanctioned, though, just because of that second action. I thought it was excusable. I don't think Tex knew that the ball had been released. I don't think that he intended to bury him. I think he actually, halfway through the action, he tried to pull out of it, and he admitted as much, that he thought halfway through that, this could be a sling tackle. He said that on the radio. But at the end of the day, I don't think it matters, and it's probably a blessing in disguise, because he's obviously cooked, and by his own admission, I think needs a bit of a break.
Well, I totally agree with that last comment, I think it's good that Tex isn't playing the last 2 games, because he would have been more of a liability than an asset, and at least this way he can start his rehabilitation a lot earlier.
Yeah, I think that's the point, and it's almost saving the club and the player from themselves. I think that decision was made, and it's been forced upon them now. They've not challenged it, and he can now do whatever's got to be done to get himself right for pre-season. And fingers crossed, he comes back and is in much better shape. There's some fair injury news around the place as well. The big one today was Jesse Hogan from Melbourne. He looks to be out for the season. That's a massive blow for them, because they've got 2 very difficult games to come now, and they're in serious risk of missing the 8, I would suggest.
I think they'll be saved by Port in the end.
Well, they may well be, yeah, and they're high percentage.
Yep.
And it's going to that's going to boil down potentially to the game against Essendon in the last round. So, but Jeremy Howe, I think, from Collingwood, is out for a couple of weeks. Obviously, we know Charlie Dixon has just got out of hospital, and he's out for the season. Just some really some of the teams battling it out for finals, having some real issues with injury.
Yeah, well, the Giants have got a couple as well.
Heath Shaw.
Yep,
he's out for the season. Another big one. So,
yeah,
they put a line through Tom Scully as well.
Just for those listening, and PJ Crows has pointed out in the chat, and g'day to people in the speaker chat, Pete's really struggling with a cold, so if he disappears, or if you hear ambulances,
radio voice, mate. That's my sexy radio voice.
Yeah, everyone just get out the alcohol wipes for the headphones.
Yeah, that's right.
Nathan Brown
So
got 3 too.
injuries are a really big thing at the moment. There's
They
some
are.
really bad injuries around.
And they might play a big say in who does what in the finals as well. I mean, GWS, I think, with all their players available, or sorry, not even with all, but with a considerable amount of their players are available, are one of the very better chances for the premiership. And yet they just keep racking up the injuries one week after another.
Well, the only team that hasn't been hit with injuries is the bloody ladder leaders at the moment.
I know. That's what really pisses me off.
As if they didn't need any more bloody advantages. I mean, who they got out at the moment? They've got Shai Bolton, Reece Conker's a test, Kane Lambert, Toby Nankervis is available after having a corky. So they're looking pretty good. Oh,
well, injury-wise, they're in very good shape. And of course, they play all the time on their home ground. That's another advantage they have. They have their home crowd, so they're going to be very, very hard to beat. The interesting thing is that the two teams that are going, you almost could say, are vying to miss the 8 in Melbourne and Port, it's a very good chance that they could lose both their last 2 games. And the interesting thing about it was, if we tank, I'm not saying we should tank, but if we did tank and North Melbourne beat us, they would both miss out.
Mm.
Yeah, that's right.
North would have been spewing that they lost to the Western Bulldogs. That was a shocking loss for them. They could have they got that one. It wouldn't have mattered this week, and they would have had St Kilda in the last round to get themselves in the 8. So that was a bad loss for them. The other injury news, just from from the Crows' perspective too, is Daniel Talia is looking like he's out for the season as well. So he's another one that's down.
They've found some more bone bruising.
Tank.
Yeah, I was very angry with Clarkey during the week. I heard Clark saying that we certainly won't be resting players, and even if they've got going to have operations at the end of the season, we'll still have them battling on until at the end of the year. And I thought, are we insane or something? Well, I mean, why would we just not, any player that's not 100% fit, just rest them and play players that are 100% fit?
Well, that's been the club line. Sloaney said it. Tech said it on the radio. Anyone that's getting interviewed by the club at the moment is saying the same thing. And whether it's just towing the company line and appearances, I mean, they're talking about bringing Seedsman back and Riley Knight back. Well, with Seedsman's hamstring, I wouldn't bother. Like, he keeps doing it. So even though it was only a low-grade hammy, what's the point in playing him? We've got blokes in the 2s that need a run.
Well, I think it's a pre-season opportunity, if you like, that blokes that haven't played a game. I mean, for example, what's the young bloke's name?
Come on, mate.
Yeah.
Himmelberg.
Himmelberg, yeah, he needs a run.
I'd give him a game, for example, and I don't know whether there are other ones that are pressing.
Harry Deer's AFLX form was fantastic earlier in the year.
No, Harry Deer's out for the season with a knee. Yeah, no, he hasn't played for quite some time, Donkey, but thanks for keeping up with it.
It's reasonable to put this in news because Matthew Clark referred to it in his press conference. I think it was just yesterday that he thought that Elliot Himmelberg has shown strong enough form that he will be a chance to be considered for selection. So he was just stoking the fires there. So I'd say that that the Big Berg, or as Nicky mentioned, apparently the players refer to him as the Big Easy. The Big Easy will be a chance for selection on Sunday. And it will be a great thing because I think he's going to be a ripper.
Yeah.
I think it's probably still a little bit early for him and we shouldn't have too great expectation on him. But very, very exciting for this young lad to come through.
And the interesting, the other one I'd like to see is McGovern come back and play as a defender. The interesting thing about that was apparently in the SANFL game, he didn't really strike very much form until he was put back there.
Well, the other bloke that played back is Fogarty and had 16 intercept possessions on that big Woodfield West Torrens forward, who's an absolute gun, that lad. So Fogarty playing full-back was an interesting one, and whether we see him play down back. Tommy Lynch has been so-so all year. I mean, Tex is out. We've got issues around Sauce and his back and hips and whatever. And now's the perfect time just to throw it around a bit and see what happens. I mean, I've been talking about JJ into the ruck, and I just think now's the time. Give Sauce the rest of the year off, chuck JJ in for a run, give Elliot Himmelberg a bit of a run, and then you've got a bit of space to bring Gov back in as well. But I don't think they'll do it. I really don't think they'll do it.
Well, if they don't, it'll just be... I've been pissed off at the management of the team all year in terms of, firstly, our fitness people, and then some of our selections have been haywire, and then some of our coaching has been haywire too. So, but if they don't go along the lines of what we're talking about, not necessarily the same people, but along the lines of giving opportunities to young blokes who you get, as I say, you can have a free preview at no real cost to anybody, and you'll give them also a taste of what it's like to play at that level. And even if they don't really fire, they'll know what they have to do to lift their game to get to that level. So I just think we've got two perfect opportunities that we really get.
Yep. 100% agree.
Couldn't agree more, Macca.
Yeah, well said, Macca.
But it won't happen.
And also, I think, Otten needs a farewell game.
Well, is he retiring?
No, I hope so.
You don't even know he's retiring. You mean you're going to farewell him?
Well, there's a couple of others playing well in the twos at the moment. Matthew Signorillo, for all his faults, has been racking up the touches in the last couple of weeks. Jackson Edwards has been playing okay as well, to be honest. I mean, you don't want to be seen as tanking, obviously, but it'd be nice to see a couple of these lads, particularly against Carlton in the last round. It'd be nice to see a couple of these lads, because let's face it, we can lose the last two, and really, we're either going to be 11th or 12th. And it's really contingent on what Essendon do anyway. So we don't need to lose, because it's not going to change our position, and winning's not going to change our position either. So we're actually in the box seat in terms of our list management, our squad management, and it'd just be a full stop on the year, like you said, Macca, if we didn't take the opportunity to manage players and give other players a bit of a run.
I think it'd be insanity if we don't.
Any other news before we move on? I saw also that Brown got 3 on it for his hit on Sard. I thought actually he was a little bit lucky.
Yeah, well, it's obviously very, very late. The ball had probably gone about at least 10 metres away. I think, it was. There was no need to hit him at all, to be honest, because he could have actually totally avoided him, because he had disposed of the ball and he could have totally missed him. But he's chosen to run through and down the front, which he's not even allowed to do either. So I thought 3 was about right, because he is going to be available next week. So this week, sorry. So I think probably it's about right.
One little thing that was a bit of news to me, and that was looking at our Facebook comments on Sunday night and seeing people commenting from Los Angeles and from Canada, and big shout out to those people. And it's amazing to think that we sit here in Gaborone and there are people overseas listening to this stuff. It's funny.
Well, and sort of listen continually, Pete. What's wrong with these people?
But a big shout out to them anyway.
Yeah, no, it's great to see. I mean, we get some demographic stats and some geolocation stats, and it amazes me. Like, we've had listeners from the Maldives and from Vietnam and Finland and all sorts of places. It's quite amazing, really. So g'day to all our international listeners. It's great to have you on board, and it just shows the power of this medium and social media, because back in the day you'd stuck watching Channel 2 one game a week, and now you're spoilt for choice, really. Anyway, look, that's probably all we need to talk about with the news. How about we get into some talk about the match, eh?
Indeed. ago. I think just one of those games that I never really thought that we were a chance to win. And I don't know. I mean, GWS probably the second or third best performed team over the last month in the AFL, and playing at a ground that they'd won their previous 8 in a row. I just felt like we were in that kind of AFL Bermuda Triangle, which includes Bluntstone Arena and places like that, where we where we go to these grounds,
Traeger Park,
Traeger Park, all these sort of weird and wonderful places where you've got teams there that play there regularly, and it's almost as though you just have to write off games when you go to those places. And I just felt that this was one of those games, and unfortunately, normally you'd hope you have enough wins in the bank that cover these kind of oddment. Like last year, we went to North to Hobart, to Bluntstone, and lost to North. It's only a couple of weeks ago that West Coast went there and lost. And it's just a massive Bermuda Triangle. And I'm not making excuses. There were aspects of our game that was poor the other night, but I've just seen it so many times where teams just go to these places and they just seem to get a little bit lost. And normally you'd hope there's enough wins in the bank to cover these, but we just didn't have wins in the bank to be able to cover this kind of game.
Well, I don't disagree with what you said. Anything you said there, I think that's all correct. And Vardy Magic says you're 3 out of 10 to win the game when the fixtures come out. But having said that, we also did contribute towards it with a very, very poor start to the third quarter, and let them pinch. We had control of the game to a degree, and we allowed them to wrench that away from us. And then we try to fight back. But we are a very poor third quarter team for some reason.
We're a very poor midfield team, Macca. Very poor midfield team. And we pulled out some stats on Sunday night, but I was actually astounded by the stat that bloke from the Essendon board puts up on Big Footy about who starts in the centre clearances. Did you guys see those?
No, I didn't.
No,
yeah, I think I did. I did.
Yeah, he puts. I mean, we did talk about it a bit on Sunday night, but I think it's worthwhile mentioning again because I was astounded by the fact that Hugh Greenwood and Cam Ellis-Yolmen had so little time on the ball in the second half of the game, and so I actually went back and had a look at the third quarter to see what happened, because we got one clearance for the quarter in the third quarter, and that clearance was actually Sauce Jacobs. And I'll just run through some numbers for you. Sloaney started at 6, Gibbs started at 2, Greenwood started at 1, Ellis-Yolmen started at 3, Douglas started at 6, Sauce started at 7, Crouch started at 7, and JJ started at 1. So our main players, who is Mrs. Macca doing dishes again, Macca?
No, that's not for me.
It's someone. So there were 8 bounces that I took note of, and we didn't, apart from the first one, that
somebody doing.
Yes, someone's doing something.
It's totally my fault. I apologise.
Okay.
This is just about to stop.
I was going to say, I've instructed the help not to come through till 10 o'clock, so we should be fine.
Sorry, my fault. Go.
No, you're all good. Pardon me. So this is how it went. The first one, Sauce got his own ruck. The second one, everyone got blocked. Crouch got blocked. Greenwood got blocked. It was just a dog's breakfast, and Ward beat Crouch for the clearance. The third one, the ball spilled defensive side and McKay ran through and it got held up. The fourth one, JJ was in the ruck and Shield just outpointed Douglas with everyone else being blocked. The next one, everyone gets blocked and the ball goes out defensive side to the Giants for a clearance. The next one, everyone gets blocked except Sloan, who takes it but spills in a tackle and the Giants clear it. The next one, Sloan gets it again, but it's wrapped up in a tackle and it's a secondary bounce. And the last one that I looked at to see why I knocked it forward, but the Giants mopped up and got the clearance, we got absolutely towed. But more importantly, when I was looking at it closely, we were inept in that third quarter. We were absolutely inept in the middle of the ground.
Well, I can't argue with. I mean, that factually, you reeled it off, and that's all fact. You know, we were a very dumb side too, very dumb in that middle. You know, obviously GWS have a plan, and the number of players you talked about of ours being blocked at the midfield.
Yep.
Which means that they're not able to get to the ball.
Yep.
But they'll be in there trying, shoving and pushing to get there. While there's some GWS bloke just sitting on the outside waiting for it to come out to them.
It was very noticeable, Macca, that we don't seem to fight hard enough for position in the centre clearances, and we don't actually. We're just not strong enough in that part of the ground, and like I've just put the clearance stats up for the match, and you can see a direct correlation between the centre clearances and the score worm going south. And interestingly, in the last quarter, when we actually tried to make a fist of it, it was our stoppage clearances around the ground that came good. We were like plus 10 or something in stoppages at the end of the game, and for that quarter, and had a really good quarter. But why in the hell are we picking two inside midfielders in Greenwood and Ellis Yeoman, and collectively they only started in three centre square contests? Why? Why are we doing that?
That is a very good example of, as I said, of some. We have had some mystifying coaching and placement of players during the year, and I think that's a very good example of it, actually.
Thane, how do we rationalise those stats, which are damning in the extreme? But how do we rationalise that with the game, with one of our better performances for the year against Geelong, where we were similarly smashed in those areas by, you would have said, was a quality midfield.
Yep.
And yet we were able to pressure the possession and effectively win the game on turnover.
Well, we could have done that again.
Outlier, do you think?
No.
Is that an outlier, or do you think it's strategic?
No, because we could have done that again on the weekend. Because we had... See, the thing that annoys me is that our stoppage clearances in the second and third, we didn't have one stoppage clearance in the third quarter. We broke even in stoppage clearances in the second and third quarter, and we were -4 in centre clearances in the third quarter. In the last quarter, we were +10 in stoppage clearances. Now that's effort. That's effort. We were talking about this last week, and let's not go there again. But why is it? And Source got on top of the ruck. He was plus, what was he? Plus something or other in the last quarter. I'll find it for you. +9 for hit-outs in the last quarter. We were +10 for stoppage clearances in the last quarter. The only reason why we weren't able to wrest the game away from GWS is our inefficiency going forward, Pete, in my opinion.
Mm.
We couldn't take a grab, and our forward line was so clogged that we didn't have a clear path to goal. That's how it looked to me. I don't know how you saw it.
This has been going on for a few weeks though. Now we've had massive amount of inside 50 entries, and our entry seems to be one plan A, and that is bomb it long, hope for a contest and hope to gain some territory and force a stoppage and see what happens. There doesn't seem too much system or movement. There wasn't even though we won that game against Port Adelaide. There was a massive inside 50 differential, and It was because we were just, it wasn't reflected on the scoreboard. So the system, the entry system, seems to have broken down.
Well, under Teague last year, coaching our forward line, we used to spread so that there was a lot of room for each individual forward to operate in, and also give the player bringing the ball into our forward line options. But at the moment, as you said quite rightly, Pete, they congregate in a bunch, and that's a defender's delight. They don't have to run anywhere; they just wait for the ball to come in, punch it to the ground, either get a scrimmage or clear it.
Well, there's a couple of things that I see that are different this year in our forward line setup, and the first is that the way we're playing Tom Lynch. Tom Lynch is and I think we've spoken about this before, so I won't labour the point, but Tom Lynch is an endurance runner, so we should be using his strength, which is his ability to run his opponent off his feet and then be able to get free and link up and be that conduit to the forward lines. But he's playing on the wing, so he's actually playing in the area where he would normally run to. So we've actually stifled his ability to run his opponent off his feet simply because he's already placed where he needs to be running to. And the second thing is that Tex is playing a lot deeper for large portions of the game. And it doesn't seem to... It seems to me that our transition game, and that game that you talked about with Geelong, was one where we played our mid-forwards quite high, Pete. And they were able to link up, and it wasn't Lynch. I don't think Lynch was playing that game, but we've reverted to this system where we're playing Tex and JJ quite deep, and they just run into each other. And Lynch is ineffective, A, because he's underdone, but B, because we're playing, in my opinion, we're starting him far too high. We're starting him up too high up the ground, and he's got no grass to run to.
Yeah, I think it's a good... Sorry, Donk, you go.
No, I was just going to say, just as a general view of just watching us play and the difference between when we're playing well and when we're not, it really feels like we're playing very reactive, or as my dad used to say, flat-footed. You know, we're not being dynamic. We're not looking to take the initiative. We're not looking to move into space and to make it a dynamic field. We're sort of sit back on our heels and wait for one bloke to do something, and then the next bloke tries to do something, and then the next bloke tries to do something. There's no cohesion, and there's no, we just don't have the initiative. We're not taking the drive. We're not backing ourselves, and you can just tell that confidence isn't there when it's not happening. Over the last 8 weeks, I reckon I've seen it a few times where the spark has started the fire for a little while, and then when we go back into our shell, it's, those guys going deep, Lynch coming up a bit too high, our mid sort of sitting back waiting to see what's going on. Too much worrying about who's doing a bit of tagging on Sloan and a few other things like that, rather than just get the ball, get it forward, and work as hard as you can.
I'll tell you the other thing I noticed, Donkey. Sorry, Pete. The other thing I noticed, and there was a stark example of it sort of late in the third quarter, I reckon, or two-thirds of the way through the third quarter, where we cleared the ball and it out of a stoppage, I reckon, and it went into our forward line, and I think it was one where Tex led up and then he kicked it to Murphy, but it didn't work out, and they got the ball back, and they switched the play sort of in the back 30 metres of the ground, and the blokes from our team that were applying pressure were Rory Sloan and Matt Crouch, and I'm thinking, where are our small forwards? Our midfielders had ran all the way up to that area of the ground following the ball, and then they were left to defend whilst our other forwards, I don't know where they were because the TV was zoomed in too close, but they weren't anywhere near the contest. And it seemed to me that there's our two on-ballers sucked into the forward pocket. GWS transitioned the ball out, and all of a sudden they've got Ward and Shield available because Sloaney and Crouch are bloody 100 metres away. Structurally, we just do not seem right at the moment. There's a lot of problems with how we're set up, in my opinion.
Begs the question, Fian, in relation to the assistant coaches. Now, I know we talked about this the other week. Surely we go after someone like Brett Ratton. I know that Marty Mackner was on the radio today talking to both clubs for a position, but surely you have a go at Brett Ratton as Hawthorn's midfield coach for the last few years.
I'll let the others have a say on that one before I have a say.
Well, Brett Ratton, at least when he was coach of Carlton, they did make the finals in his last year before they give him the big aid and putting in Mick Malthouse, who then proceeded to demolish them before this young Bolt come on and completed the job. But no, I think Ratton would be a reasonable acquisition.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, Macca. I think that Ratton was at the head of one of their stronger rebuilds. You know, I think number 3 out of the 5 they're in now. And I also think that sometimes we get fixated on what a head coach's record has been, but there's a lot of factors in play. The bloke was obviously skilled enough to get them where they were. And I think we just can't have we cannot have the same assistant setup going into next year without and expect a different result. We just can't.
I think it's a no-brainer. Why would you not want someone who's got head coach experience, who's had reasonable success with, let's face it, a difficult club in Carlton? No one's had any success with that club since. And he's been sitting in the Hawthorn system for the last few years, and if there's any system that you want some insight into and some intellectual property, it's the Hawthorn system. Personally, I'd be throwing the checkbook at him.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, I reckon his experience with Carlton is long enough in the past that really you're recruiting him really based upon the fact that he's been the midfield coach at Hawthorn.
Yep.
And through the premiership years. You know, that's what you're recruiting.
Yeah.
I mean, he surely would have to be one of the most desirable midfield coaches out there.
Yeah.
And I know you have to get him from Melbourne, but you just have to pay the money, surely.
I think you do. Just watch your chord there, Pete. I think you do just have to pay the money and pay the bloody tax if it sends you over the cap, for God's sakes.
Yep.
Totally agree. Yep, totally agree.
You know, there's talk about Sumich as well from WA. Now, I've never been inspired by him whenever I've heard him talk, but the raps on him are pretty good, so he's got to have something. So whether Don Pike as the next premiership teammate has got his sights set on Peter Sumich, I don't know. He's just coaching the under-18s over there at the moment, I think. But personally, if it were me, Brett Ratton would be the one. I'd be thinking about Truck Rutten if he's available. He's been sitting in the Richmond system for a couple of years through some success. They're the blokes we've got to target. And there seems to be a real issue with Adelaide not wanting to go over the cap. And I can understand that they want to be, prudent with the way they spend money. But I think it's where do you spend your money, not how much you spend. And I think given our current situation with assistant coaches, that's where we need to spend some money. Don Pike needs some assistance. I think he needs some experienced heads, and I think there's a few blokes on our coaching panel, irrespective of what you think about their ability, it's just time for a new voice, I think.
New blood. Blood.
Well, Jeff Kennett put it very, very well. I don't know if you saw his quotes through the week, coincidentally, in relation to Brett Ratton and why they are parting ways with Brett Ratton. It's not about the fact that they don't rate him. He's a highly valued member of their team, but the Hawthorn way is that you just, you have to keep moving forward. You have to keep changing things up. You have to, you have to regenerate. And it's not about Brett Ratton personally. It's about they just have a philosophy. Apart from the head coach, of course, that they need to regenerate their assistants.
Well, I think you got everything you guys have said is 100% correct. But that should really be part of a bigger situation, in my opinion. The club must, if it's got any integrity whatsoever, do a complete review and done by an outside party.
Oh, that's not going to happen, Macca.
Yeah, it won't happen, Macca.
But it has to happen because
but it won't.
This is a club that has shot itself in the foot when it's been in a premiership winning situation. It's a club that has appointed the wrong people to the wrong positions, and it's a club that really needs to be totally examined by an outsider and critiqued in an honest fashion. You won't get that from internal reviews, and the only way you'll get that is from an outside review. And I think as a result of that, you'd find some of these assistant coaches would be gone, and replaced, and you'd also find that the structure with Burton being in charge of football, for God's sake. I mean, fancy that. I mean, seriously, how can you have a coach and a coaching panel and everything underneath that reporting to this effing idiot? I mean, seriously. I mean, the club is off its head. It is off its head. It has to be critiqued externally. I mean, it has destroyed itself.
Macca, what's the cat? Sorry,
does that cover us for slaps? Does that cover us for slaps and sweet? Yeah?
No, that's a warm up.
Oh God, Macca, tell me this though: what's the catalyst going to be? What would be the catalyst for a complete review of the club?
Well, the catalyst, in my opinion, would be people like us putting that in places like even on Big Footy, ringing up 5AA. No, I'm serious.
Oh, no, I'm not saying that we shouldn't, but that's not the catalyst. That won't be the catalyst.
We don't. Well, look, certainly up on other football shows, they are saying we need a review. Mm-hmm. And from my point of view, I will be writing to the general manager, and I'll be a CEO, and I'll be saying to young Fagan that I won't be renewing my membership next year, and I'm a founding member. If that moron Burton is still holding that position, I can't possibly pay any money to a club that is going to use it partially to hire a dickhead as a total in charge of the total football operation.
How many people do you think, Macca? You're going to have to have a lie down in a minute. I don't disagree with anything that you're saying, but what I'm doing is playing devil's advocate in terms of what is going to light a fire under the club to do these sort of things. And you tearing out your membership just means that one of the 10,000 people on the waiting list can get a ticket. I mean, that is the reality of the situation. The reality of the situation is that there is no fiscal catalyst for the club to do a review, and I would suggest that there's not enough passion in the club to make winning premierships its number one priority.
Then they'll never win a bloody premiership ever.
Well, I don't disagree with that either. I don't disagree with that either, Macca.
It's 20 years since we won one, and we've had mediocrity by the bucket loads in that period of time. I mean, Craig, if he listened to other people, might have won one in 2005, but you couldn't tell Craig anything. We blew it in 2005. We blew it again in 2006. And then we've blown it in 2017, and then we killed it in 2018. Anytime we do get an opportunity, we shoot ourselves in the foot. And
blew it in 2012 too. Don't forget that one, Macca.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry.
It happens so often you can't remember them all.
You lose count.
Other clubs don't have to do it to us. We do it to ourselves.
But Macca, let's face it. There's been plenty of opportunities for reviews of the club, and when was the only time? Well, sorry, there's been 2 times that the club has been shaken up in its 20-odd year history. When were those 2 times?
96.
Well, Blight and Walsh.
Blight and Walsh, exactly right. And, we'll never know, unfortunately, how things would have panned out with Phil, but we certainly know how things panned out with Malcolm. And the first thing he did was make some really hard decisions. And the fact is there's no impetus within the club, there's no catalyst within the club to make hard decisions. We've been talking about the quality of the list for 2 seasons now on this podcast, and notwithstanding the fact that we made a grand final last season, let's be honest, it was a soft year, and we still couldn't beat a team who, whilst they had home ground advantage, people don't talk about the pressure that club must have been under to deliver after however many years in the wilderness. They were under pressure too, and they delivered in front of their fans. They could have gone to pieces in front of their fans. But we went to pieces in front of our fans, and largely because of what we've analysed on this podcast as being a soft underbelly in our squad. And we've seen plenty of examples where that's occurred in big matches. But have we seen wholesale changes made to our list? No. We've seen incremental changes.
I think what you're driving at, Fiend, if I'm reading you correctly, is what you're talking about is sort of the only. It's not going to happen with the rank and file, ringing in and writing and all that. They don't care. It's going to take an agent of change, for want of a better term. They need to get the right kind of people in the right kind of places who are the kind of people that will drive change. But it's how you get those people to your club.
Well, Pete, I don't know about you. Sorry, Mac, I'll shut up in a second. Pete, I don't know how you've observed this, but my observation has been there's been 2 change agents come into the club in the last 5 years. One's been Rashudo, one's been Andrew Fagan. And yet my assessment from afar, just, by the little bits and pieces that you see and hear and all that sort of stuff, they've assimilated into a culture rather than change the culture. When they came in all guns blazing, particularly Rashudo. All guns blazing, ditch the coach, change things up, and we got some results as a consequence. And I would imagine that everyone listening would agree that the vibe around the club was one of being refreshed and being revitalised, and certainly a feeling of hope around the club. Andrew Fagan was the same. He came in with big ideas, and he's done a good job from a revenue point of view. But the rhetoric now that we hear from the club makes us forget. Remember when Walshy was saying things like no spin club and all that sort of stuff?
Yep.
What happened to that? Why haven't we continued on with that? With those mantras? Because I don't think I've been more engaged with the club than I was in 2015, since the double premiership days, and now we've gone back to the same old thing. And to me, you're dead set right, Pete. It needs an agent of change, and it needs an agent of change at the top, and that's Chapman's job.
Mm.
Well, I don't even disagree with that. I mean, but have you seen Pike and Burton on TV together alongside it? Have you actually watched Pike's body language?
Oh yeah, I know they don't. It's easy to tell that they don't get along, but I don't think that's going to actually. I mean, I know you've got to be in your bonnet about Burton, Macca, and rightly so. But I think the problem is deeper than that. It's a cultural issue, and I'd like to see someone step in over the top at the chairman level and kick some ass. We've had people on that board for years and years. They filled the board with member representatives, quote unquote, who were just plants for the establishment in that club. And the people that do come in and want to shake things up, you listen to them 6 or 12 months later and they're just towing the company line like everyone else. So there's obviously a cultural issue at the club. It's not a club that embraces innovation and it doesn't challenge itself to improve. It seems to be a club where there's quite a comfort zone.
Mm.
Yeah, but my point is, though, that any organisation has to have the right people in the right jobs. And we've got too many people not the right people for the right jobs. And therefore, what flows from that are wrong decisions. And, I mean, for example, Burton and his mate Haas wrecked our season, firstly with the camp, then with the fitness. And, Burton's been appointed to a job that he's got no experience in. He's actually, the list manager has to report to him. The coach has to report to him. He's done none of those things. I mean,
it sometimes reminds me of a throwback to 1960s SNFL where the captain morphs into the coach, and anybody that anybody in the team that done year 12 morphs into the general manager, and it all just goes from there. And whoever taped the ankles goes on to be the club medico, and it seems to be a haven for job. I know that the old cliche is jobs for the boys, but if you look at there just seems to be an inordinate amount of ex-players who are filling important positions and important roles, and I know Fagan was an outside appointment, but I think you're right, Fiend. There just needs to be somebody that doesn't owe anything to anybody to get in there and actually just say, well, what does this club want to stand for?
Well, there is one person, and you're probably leading me into that, Pete, but there's one person who I've identified that should be running our club right now, and
I'm too busy, mate. I've got too many things on.
Yeah, Malcolm Blight. Malcolm Blight stands head and shoulders above anyone else in terms of being a change agent. He was a change agent when he came to the club in '96. He owes nobody anything. He has 100% credibility when it comes to football. He says some weird stuff sometimes, but he gets he gets results, Macca. And the thing about Malcolm Blight is he wouldn't care less who was at the club. He would walk in there with enough credibility to be able to say, you're out, you're out, you're in. There wouldn't be any half measures with Malcolm, because the one thing that he would do if he was given the mandate to do it is to just set the club up with the people, as you rightly point out, the right people in the right positions to give us the best opportunity of getting success. He would start running it again like a football club instead of like a corporation, which is what we've become.
Do you think he's got the passion still to do that, though?
Oh, I reckon it'd be a fair challenge for him.
Because he was a letdown at St Kilda, and he never put his heart and soul into that.
Macca, would you want to coach St Kilda? Let's be honest.
Well, he took the $1 million.
Yeah, well...
Look, he tried, but his problem was he tried to do change it in St Kilda, and he got rejected by everyone on every
they didn't like it.
Yeah, and that's why they still haven't won a flag.
That's right. I don't look at that St Kilda sojourn at all. And look, he was involved up at Gold Coast for a while. I think that's just because he was there. And when he came in as football director, he got rid of McKenna and, shook things up a bit there. But let's face it, he's a South Australian. He's back in Adelaide. He's had success with our club. If ever there was a club that he was going to be passionate about, it's ours. And Rob Chapman's time has got to be up soon. I don't know what the term is for a chairman, but he's been there for long enough. And we need change at that level, and we need someone who's going to instigate change. And I can't think of anybody else that is available and associated with football who would be a good choice. So Malcolm stands out as a good choice to come in and take a bit of a broom through the place.
Well, I accept what you're saying, and whether it be Malcolm or whether it be somebody like Malcolm, and I can't think of any names offhand, it really needs that sort of change. So somebody will sit down and then analyse it and really build the club up correctly, so that they don't have weak links here and there, and then they'd also that if they put the right people in again, and analyse the players. Blokes like Atkins would be they'd be traded off, because, they're going to let you down when the crunch comes. So, you'd have to go through the whole list situation, the whole coaching situation, everything. And that's what's needed. We've had opportunities to win premierships, and when we've blown them, and that's going to keep on happening while we've got the type of structure that we have.
But do you know why it keeps on happening, Macca? Because there's no retribution, because the next season we fill the stadium again. And that's what I'm getting at.
Well,
what's the catalyst?
You're right. Financially, you're right. But there is a retribution in the sense that you make. The football world in general mocked Adelaide for its performance last year, and mocked it for what's happened to it this year.
Yep.
We were the target of just about every football session, whether it be on TV or radio. There was a snipe at Adelaide about something, and particularly about the camp at the beginning of the season. We were the laughing stock. In fact, even Richie had the nerve to put that in, that we were Corns? We were the laughing stock of the AFL. Well, I think we've got bigger laughing stocks than some of those writers, but
I think Port are the laughing stock now.
Well, they are. Yeah,
but anyway,
but it hasn't. They're not bringing in any credit on the club at all. They make the club look very, very poor, and surely they realise that.
Well, I don't know whether they necessarily do, Macca, because I don't know whether they're whether that's how they see it. I mean, there's the old adage of, and I wrote this on Big Footy the other day, the old adage of the club being bigger than the individuals. But at the moment, the club is more a vehicle for the people who work there. And I don't think that they necessarily see themselves as custodians of the club. And let's face it, the club doesn't have a history. You're not stepping into a club that's got, 50, 60, 70 years of history. So it's understandable to a degree that it's unfolded the way it has in terms of the culture within the place. And that's why I think that there needs to be a real change agent come into the place and to remind everyone and to change the culture to the extent that the Adelaide Football Club will be there when you arrive and they'll be there when you go, and you need to leave it in a better condition than when you found it. And I don't know whether blokes working there at the moment necessarily feel that way. It doesn't seem that way.
Well, what he said is 100% correct. That's what's got to happen. I worked as a manager from the time I was 23, and my philosophy basically was to make sure I had the right people in the right position, and I had a plan of action of how I was going to achieve what I wanted to achieve. And I will honestly say, to pump up my own tyres, I was always successful at doing it because I always got the right people in the right job. And that meant that I didn't have to do so much.
Yeah, but why did you do that, Macca?
Because I was driven that way. That's the way I thought.
No, but what was your motivator? What, you're a manager?
To be successful.
Yeah, well, isn't the Adelaide Football Club successful?
No.
Well,
yes,
we are. We fill a stadium every week.
No, it's not there. The motive of a football club is not to collect big buckets of money. It's to try and win premierships.
That's my point. That's my point.
That should be the prime motivation of what the Adelaide Football Club's all about. And then you go backwards from there. What are the people necessary in what positions to achieve that? I'm
not disagreeing with you, but that's my point. My point is that I don't think plastered on the wall in front of everyone's desk is our number one priority is to win a premiership. I don't think that's the number one priority at the football club. They would say that it is, but I wonder whether at the top of every job description, at the top of every process, at the top of every function that the club does, I wonder whether at the very forefront it says, does this action contribute to winning a premiership? And I don't think that that's how the club operates.
What you said is actually right. About that should be the motivation behind every action that's taken, and everybody in the whole organisation should be hired on the basis that they think along those lines, so that it flows all the way through the organisation, through at the top in the board level, then through the managers, and through then the people that work in groups, and they're the group leaders, and then the individuals in those groups. It's until you get that type of structure in place that they've driven, that's all they're going to get, you'll never be successful.
Donkey, you've been very quiet.
It's been a bit of a merry-go-round conversation. Like, I think we all in raucous agreement that the club doesn't seem to be focusing on winning. And I know we talk about winning and all those sorts of things, but it doesn't seem to take the actions that you need to do to win. And it's very frustrating. I fired off an email to Mr. Fagan a couple of weeks ago. I haven't received any reply, which I'm a bit annoyed about. I called for a review before or just after the Melbourne game, after they broke my heart into 1,000 pieces. And I thought that I would have got something.
Well, Donkey, you're just not no one either. You coordinate the supporters in the Northern Territory.
That's right.
It's not as if you're no one to the club.
No. Well, yeah. And I held the banner once at a game, so I probably should carry a lot more weight. But look, at the end of the day, the thing about Fagan was he came in, he talked about wanting to have the best football department, accountable club, making it the best, doing the things you need to make it as as the best, and it just didn't happen, and it still hasn't happened. And there was a few changes that were made. There's some things that were really good, and I was talking to someone over the weekend, actually, another Northern Territory Crow supporters group board member, and he was saying that he felt that the club was sort of stuck in a post-Walsh phase, that nobody wanted to make the hard call on anybody, and that we just sort of kept moving on and on. But
isn't that a pre-Walsh phase?
Well, post-Walsh as in everyone's still pre-Walsh, yes, but also post-Walsh in terms of they've reverted back to no one wanting to hurt each other by having those hard conversations and moving each other on. Those man conversations used to happen under the Walsh sort of time.
Well, and that's the problem, isn't it, Donk? Because that's why Rashudo came in with a big hammer and brought Walsh in. But
and
everyone seems to have forgotten
going down the right path. And
exactly.
And then they've got close to success, and they thought, how do we do this better? And they've sort of, condensed. They've condensed, and they've doubled down on the work, but they haven't necessarily doubled down on the smarts. And I don't like to be up on a bloke I don't know, but just on the outside, the way that Brett Burton handled himself in that press conference, it was quite clear and evident that he felt that it was, a strain on his life, that he had to be there and had to talk to people about why things weren't going so well. And it was, it's offensive to him that this was even occurring. Well, they need to take a step out of, the white elephant of the Westlake Centre and whatever it's called, and have a good hard look at themselves and go, you know what, we just took a brand new Ferrari that was doing fastest laps every day of the week, and is now sitting in the bottom of a swamp. And what have we done to do about that? And what are we doing to fix it? And how are we making sure that our car races properly? I don't share the same pessimism about our list and the blokes and as a lot of other people do. I know they haven't performed sometimes in key situations, but what I do think is until we get that back of office right, until we get that coaching structures right, until we get that hard edge driving through, we're not going to do it. I actually feel like Pike is the right guy. I think Pike's the right guy to coach.
I agree.
He needs to stamp his feet and say, this is my club, this is my time, and if you guys aren't giving me what I need, then I'm out, and really call on them, because everybody else is letting him down.
Well, I 100% agree with you, Donkey. I think you've summed it up.
I'm going to pop in and just give a final word on this, because I'm coming up the hour mark. I think that there are two key objectives for the Crows. Obviously, one is to win a premiership. The second objective, and I think is as important to them as the first objective, is to fill stadiums. And unfortunately, I don't think that those two necessarily marry up. And I think that can be anything from the way that we manage our list to the way that we manage injured players, and the way that we implement strategy, over probably a 5-year period. So I think that I sometimes think that, unfortunately, and I agree with you, Fane, that sometimes the filling of the stadium is the most important consideration. And I think that, just looking at the way that we've managed this year, in terms of the way that we've managed some key players with injury, and the way that we have, how we've presented to the public. And you only have to look at the way that we're presenting in these last sort of couple of games. And that is that what this club's about is about filling stadiums. And, what this club, what it should be about is winning the 2019 premiership. And
correct.
I just don't know that those two objectives are necessarily always on the same page. So that's my thought on that.
Yeah. Pretty well summed up, I think. And you're off, Pete, are you?
I'm off, mate, and I'll catch you next week. It's been a pleasure.
Very good.
Yeah, see you, Pete.
Thanks, Pete.
Cheers.
See you, mate.
See you, mate.
Well, we've got a game coming up against North Melbourne, and as Pete crackles away there, and it means a hell of a lot more to North Melbourne, obviously, than it does to us, and I suppose we've covered it to an extent with regards to what we'd like to happen, but You know, it's a game at Adelaide Oval. You would expect that there'd be some desire for the club to give Andy Otten a send-off, as you pointed out earlier, Donkey, and to make a good showing, and, you know, last home game for the season, etc., etc. Does anyone really care?
No, I don't. I'd much prefer they lost.
Yeah, let's lose, lock up 12th, and give North the best opportunity to make the finals while Melbourne miss out.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a very good point you raised there, Donkey, and because that's one of the reasons I would like North Melbourne to beat us, because that way that gives them every opportunity of getting into the 8 as well, which means that both Melbourne and Port could then miss.
Yeah, I think rest Sauce, start Otten in the ruck, let McKay play centre. Let's put CEY on the wing. Trial Jody up front. You know, I think that's all the sort of stuff we should be doing.
Well, after such deep thought, how could that be called tanking?
Look, I don't think we need to spend too much time on the North game. I mean, obviously, we've aired our views as to what we feel should happen in selection and how we feel the squad should be managed for the last couple of weeks. And I think selection on Thursday will give us a very good indication of what the club actually intends to do. I think that some of the rhetoric during the week from the club has just been pretty much, you know, playing a straight bat.
I genuinely hope so.
I think it's inside voices versus outside voices.
I think so. Well, put it this way: the fact that we all think so probably reflects what we'd like to happen. So, personally, I'd be pretty shocked if it was just Seedsman and Knight in, and no new blood and no resting of players. I'd be pretty shocked, actually.
Well, if you have a look at Pike's presser after the game, you know, he's talking about, you know, we haven't thought about it yet or made decisions, but we'll look at who needs surgeries, and we'll look at next, you know, and he said looking at it from a pre-season point of view, like he said it without saying it on the, you know, after the game. So let's just hope. Let's hope we see a few new. Look, and I want to say who are the stars going to be running around Australia in AFLX at the start of next year? You know, that's what I want to see.
Yeah.
Is it happening again?
Was that AFLX? I don't know, actually. That's a very good question.
So what was the question?
Is AFLX going again?
I don't know. They thought it was successful, so it probably will.
Yeah, well, people forget that we're the inaugural premiers, so, I mean, come on.
Yeah. And we'll it was great for the game. Being able to, hearing Brian Taylor call out super duper goals was just ecstatic. The fact that they hadn't trolled the ball and they had to change it over by the last game of the first night because no one could actually see it or catch it. Like, it was all really good stuff. Well thought through.
I'm looking forward to the Zinger goalpost and the Zinger ball next year. But anyway, Donkey,
KFC's come back out with the double downs. It's fantastic.
Look,
well, they can put tambourines on the ball, so if it ever gets a bit dark, you can at least hear it.
I'm calling time on this ridiculous discussion. Donkey, competitions, mate.
I'm going to talk about double downs.
Hang on. And go.
All right, so we are into the preliminary final round of Dream Team, the CrowCast Dream Team League. We have Sal Wheat matching up with Peanut, the Winter March. It's going to be a cracker of a game. Sal Wheat scoring 33-30 in the last game. Winter March scoring 23-20. So it was 23-30 and 23-20. So only 10 points separating those two from the last game. Should be an absolute cracker for everyone to watch. And then we've also got Corey and the One Win Wonders playing for Ratchos. That's only 50 points to separate those guys. So I know everybody's been hanging on the edge of their seats to see who's going to take out the inaugural and probably last AFL Dream Team CrowCast competition. And it's down to the final four.
Right, tipping.
As we move into tipping, J-Mac holding a strong 5-point lead. No one can stop him. Definitely not anyone from the CrowCast. Dom is up there too with 122. B Short 122. And Mark up there with 122. Cellar Dwellers and Moyley falling off the pace. Moyley, what are you doing? You're letting yourself down. You're letting all us down. You're only on 121. Last week, J-Mac got 5. Big rounds from B Short and Mark with 7s. Cellar Dwellers got a 6, but Moyley only had a 5 as well. So you got to think about, you're going to have your own personal end of season review, Moyley. Amazingly, the CrowCast end of the scoreboard, Donkey still holds a 2-point lead over Peter
That's
J.
That's incredible how that happens.
A 6-point lead over Phoenix. We all got 4 again for the round, which is amazing. That's like 9 weeks in a row where we've all hit the same. Cannot understand how that keeps happening, but great minds think alike, and I still think like you two. That's all from the competitions.
Fantastic. That was incredible work. Well done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Game of Crows. Who do we have? Who was our leading pressure acts? We had Jenkins and Sloan on 23. So anyone who picked Jenkins and Sloan got 3 points. Greenwood on 22, so they get 2 points. And who was the last? Rory Atkins. Who would pick Rory Atkins for pressure acts? I didn't think he got near it. 21 for Rory Atkins. So we've got one more round before the massive bonus round. Everyone's dropped off this competition. It's extremely disappointing. So I'm going to bring you all back. But this week, I'm going to go something obscure. I'm going to go time on ground. Time on ground this week as our last 3-2-1 round for the year. And then round 23, it's all bets are off, and I'll be putting something together that will give everyone an opportunity to win the case of beer. So this week, time on ground for Game of Crows. And, Mako, I don't even know whether you deserve... Sorry, go on.
I was going to make a selection, but go on. Did you have your go first?
I don't care about your selection. You're not in this competition.
All right, I won't give one.
But I don't know whether you deserve another bloody segment.
Why?
Yeah, I don't think so.
That's what I am, and I really don't care who knows it.
Well, you've just teed off for about 20 minutes. You've taken over the whole bloody podcast, and now you want your own segment.
Does he even know where he is? You want pancakes, Macca?
Oh, yeah, champ. No, couple of sweets. West Coast, big sweet for West Coast, not only for beating Port and stuffing up their finals chance, but it's the second time they've done it in successive years, and also they've done it in the most agonising way after the siren, and I think that's beautiful. Well done, West Coast. And they've also...
so good, Macca. It was so good.
And look, they've also given Port Adelaide another record. They say, there's history here in the making. They did make history. The only team ever to lead for the whole game from the first siren to the last siren and then lose it after the siren. And so they can add that to the 119.
Where did you get that stat from, Macca? Because I don't think that's true.
It is true.
Where'd you get the stat from?
I'm not telling you.
No, you just read it on Big Footy somewhere.
No, I didn't know. No, actually, that was actually... I did get that. That was on one of the shows on either TV or radio. One of the experts had looked it up, and that's what they say.
There are no experts. I'd be shocked if that hasn't happened before. I'd be shocked.
I bet you can't quote one, and I can tell you now, I don't really care. It sounds bloody good. So we are going with it, mate.
Yeah, unless you've got counter evidence, fan, you can.
Yeah, fair enough. Whatever. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, right. Well,
Jesus.
What? And Isaac Heating gave me a lot of pleasure with that beautiful mark that he took, which will that will vie with Ryan's mark for West Coast. One of those two will be mark of the year, but that was beautiful to watch, and that showed what a class player can do in a pressure situation when they were really under fire. As far as smacks go, well, Michael Christian, he would not know his ass from his elbow, that bloke, seriously. I mean, Ablett, he should have been done for overacting like Rance did. Now, he said, it was put to him, why didn't he? And he said because there was an element of doubt whether he tripped over Narkle's foot. Well, I actually played that vision slowly, frame by bloody frame by bloody frame, and I can tell you, if he'd bothered to do the same, he would have seen that Ablett, who had been just touched on the chest, threw himself backwards to the ground, and that if he made any contact at all with Narkle's leg, it was when he was bum had already hit the ground when he was lying horizontal. So it had nothing to do with that. Another incompetent piece of incompetence by him. And he is. He is totally
Jesus,
bloody...
what? Come on, mate.
Well, I've got more.
Get in there, Macca. Do it.
And what about the umpiring this week? What about the umpiring? I mean, we've got...
No, don't do that. Don't do that. Just because you have all the buttons, Phoenix, you're going to have a revolt one day. We're going to get some buttons too.
Oh, my God. I can mute you, though.
We had the situation that not only a text report, but we also had, one umpire said hold the ball, the other one reported him. Then we've got the shot where they had a shot for goal, GWS, just missed, went the other side of the post, and up runs the bloody field umpire, wanted a score review because he wanted to know whether it was out of bounds or not. And
that was bizarre. That was bizarre.
Yeah.
That really was.
And then that was followed by Razor Ray, who called the ball touched for a point, and then called for a score review whether it was touched or not. And I think, seriously. And then the Hawthorn game, with a crunch time there was a free paid in the centre of the ground to Hawthorn's opponent, Geelong. And about 5 seconds later, Mitchell kicks the ball the wrong way, no 50-metre kick. If that had been paid, there probably would have been a result in a goal, and there would have been 30 to 40 seconds for Geelong to ever had a chance to win the game. And I could go on and on and on. But
you have gone on and on and on.
But what I'm going to suggest, we just give all the umpires a slap because they're all stupid.
Why didn't you just say that at the beginning?
What do you think about Brett Burton, Macca?
Oh,
Tell us what you think about Brett Burton.
Have you got half an hour?
Yes.
Oh, shit. I need to lie down after that. But the biggest question I've got, Macca, for you is...
Yes.
Did you find out who stole your bloody letterbox on Sunday night?
No. And just for anybody who didn't hear that, some bus actually stole my letterbox on Sunday night.
Was it a nice letterbox, Macca?
It was an expensive bus. It cost me about $300.
Do you know what I reckon happened, Macca? I reckon you've gone to Bunnings, and you and Mrs. Mac have gone to Bunnings, and Mrs. Mac has pointed at that letterbox and gone, gee, that's a nice letterbox, we should buy that. So you've gone, yes dear, I'll buy that. But you've thought, nah, it's shit house. So you haven't really bought it. Then you told Mrs. Macca that you put it in, and then she's gone out to have a look at it and it's gone, and she thinks it's been stolen. And you'd never actually bought it in the first place.
Geez, I wish that was true. I'd have me $300 back.
What did it look like, Macca? Was it tin?
$300?
Well, I thought,
Who the fuck pays $300 for a bloody bill holder?
Vardy Magic says, why wasn't it concreted in? It bloody well was. They just sawed it off. And I thought you must be there, Felix.
Shit.
Seriously. We did go to Bunnings, and Macca did pick the bloody most dearest one there, and I did nod my head, and I did buy the bloody thing. I thought, were you looking over my shoulder or something?
Yeah, no.
Macca, it's a letterbox, Macca.
$300 bill collector.
Who still gets letters? How old are you? Jesus.
He's very old.
Well, look, mate, it's really a bill box, not a letter box.
I
know.
Letter.
Paying $300 for just... Oh, God. Anyway, look. It's time to go. Thanks everyone on Spreaker for the chat's been very lively tonight. Thanks for those people who have joined us on Facebook. There's been a few people chatting, which has been great to see. Don't forget you can listen on demand on either platform at any stage. Spreaker.com/users/AFL CrowCast or Facebook.com/AFL CrowCast. Or, of course, all our podcasts are available on our website, AFL CrowCast. And if you search on iTunes or any of 600 million podcatching software, including Spotify and TuneIn Radio, you'll be able to find us there. Just search CrowCast, you'll be able to find us there. The number one Crows podcast in Australia, Donkey and Macca. The number one Crows podcast in Australia. I think there might be...
How many are there?
Maybe two.
I was going to say, with such raw talent, who could miss?
No, there's a few. And for those people that use the Footy Live app, we're about to appear on the Footy Live app as well. Footy Live's a really good app, actually. Get around it if you're into your live stats and all that sort of stuff.
I've just seen the graphic that Sweet and Smacks. It's so good.
Well, haven't you seen that before? Anyway, we're going to go. So, look, thanks everyone for joining us. You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook, as I said, aflcrowcast.com. Visit our website, aflcrowcast.com. Give us a review on iTunes. Thanks, Donkey. Thanks, Macca.
Our pleasure.
Thanks, Pete, if you're out there. Hope you survived. And we'll see you on Sunday for the Wrap Show. Night, everyone.
Yeah, good night, all.